Hi, my name's Kevin Hicks. Welcome to my YouTube channel, The History Squad. Now, today's video has been voted for by my Patreon members. Hey guys, this is the story about John Babbacome Lee, the man who couldn't be hanged. Now, I first heard about this as a young teenager listening to the folk rock group Fairport Convention, because they did a whole album about John Lee. And so I've known about it. I've been to Babbacombe. It's down in Devon, now a suburb of Torquay, I understand. But it all begins with a murder. The murder victim, Miss Emma Keyse, lived in the most beautiful house right on the waterfront at Babbacombe Bay, the Glen. It was a thatched house. I've seen a photograph of it. Absolutely beautiful. Now, she was a dour kind of a lady, a bit religious, well-to-do though, I'm sure, because she had servants. She had John Lee was nominally called her butler. There was a cook, Elizabeth Harris, that's John Lee's half-sister. Then Eliza and Jane Neck, who were her lady servants. So she quite well-to-do to have those. She was in dispute with the local fishermen over fishing rights, so she could get quite angry from what I can gather. But there's an extra character here. He was a caller from the, shall we call him, the Victorian set from the cliffs above, the well-to-do, and that was Reginald Templar, a solicitor. So you'll hear a little bit more about him later on. The brutal murder of Miss Keyse took place overnight, 14th, 15th of November, 1884. It was around about 3:30 in the morning that the maid, Eliza, raises the alarm when she smells smoke. She goes downstairs, discovers the body of Miss Keyse, who's been beaten round the back of the head. She says that John Lee was already there and had bloodstains on his shirt. John Lee reckons he was fast asleep in bed when the maid wakes him up. Everybody now is awake. The place is on fire. Miss Keyse is dead. John Lee goes outside, smashes one of the dining room windows, cutting his hand in the process. He says to let the smoke out. He then runs over to the Carry Arms, the local pub, where the landlord is woken up, and he comes over to lend a hand. They put the fire out, but the landlord asks for a hatchet to help chop some of the smouldering wood away from the beams. The hatchet is lifted out of the wood pile and it is found to be covered in blood. The police will match the hatchet to the wounds later on. What John Lee does now is he goes and raises the alarm with the police. The next morning, the police search the property. In a drawer near to where John Lee slept, they found a razor-sharp knife. Miss Keyse was found to have had her throat slit so deep she'd almost been decapitated. Also, near to where John Lee slept, an empty paraffin can was found. 3 fires had been set in the dining room, including one near the body of Miss Keyse. The police surmise it's to burn the evidence. John Lee, being the only man in the house, is arrested. Suspect number 1. Do you know his own sister actually gave a statement to say that he'd threatened Miss Keyse and he threatened to burn the house down and watch it burn from on top of the cliff. The trial was swift. Now, Reginald Templar, remember that name, was his original defence attorney. But he was ill. He had a mental illness. So he had to withdraw from the trial. But he now pays somebody else to defend John Lee. Now his defence attorney, his new guy, brings up a little subject here. He says Elizabeth, John Lee's half-sister, was pregnant. Who was the lover? Was there another person involved? Because the house was all locked up, so nobody broken in. Was there another person in the house? Well, they ignored that, and John Lee was found guilty and sentenced to death. He will be executed by hanging on the 23rd of February 1885. Throughout the trial, John Lee had proclaimed his innocence. And just a few days before the execution date, he's visited by a vicar. And John Lee confesses to him that there were 2 other people involved in the murder. And he's advised to make a statement, which he did, which was then sent to the Home Secretary, who refused clemency. John Lee is going to hang. And on the day of the execution, it's all set up, and guess what? Kev has made a model. Here it is. Now, this is what should happen. The excess rope is tied up. There is the condemned man. He will step onto the trap door. The hangman will pull the lever and he will plunge to his death through the trap doors. That's what's supposed to happen. Let's just do a quick demonstration of that, because I've made the model and I'm quite pleased with it. The original gallows have been moved from place to place. They weren't built purposely just this hanging. But what should have happened is quite straightforward. Now, I'm holding the excess rope. I just couldn't quite get it to work. But all I had to do was press the lever to remove the bolt. The trapdoor gives way. Job done. That's what should have happened. But what really happened was this. John stands on the trapdoor. The lever is pulled. Nothing happens. He feels the trapdoor give a little bit, but it doesn't go through. The executioner plus a couple of the guards stamp on the trapdoor and it moves a little bit. Can you imagine being John, waiting for that drop? He is then manoeuvred away. From what I understand is he still has the bag over his head. They bring in warders to check it out. They think that this has happened or that's going wrong, so they even shave off a little bit of the trap door. John is then brought all the way back on. He stands there and the lever is pulled. Nothing happens. This poor man is taken to the one side again, still with the rope around his neck, for goodness sake. They check it and they try it out. They put a sack of concrete on and it works fine. So they bring the poor man back. Now the third time, pull the lever, nothing happens. The chief constable said it was actually 4 times. Well, 3 or 4 times, let's face it, it's enough for any man, because the medical officer steps in now and he says enough's enough. This man has been through too much. He is taken back to the condemned cell. Can you imagine his state of mind? What are they going to do? They're going to bring me back out? Well, what happens now is the governor of the prison goes to London, meets with the Home Secretary, and his sentence is commuted to life. John Lee would spend the next 22 years in prison. But do you know, he'd always proclaimed his innocence all the way through the trial, all the way through his prison time. He'd even said to John Berry, the executioner, just before the attempted first execution, that he would take the secrets of who was there in his heart to the grave. Well, Reginald Templar, do you remember him? The solicitor, the man who paid for the defense attorney for John Lee. Well, this is the alternative story from John Lee. He says the night of the murder, 4 of them were down in the kitchen. That is his half-sister, Elizabeth, and Reginald Templar, her lover and the father of her unborn child. This is a bit of a scandalous thing going on, because Reginald he's up there. He's one of the toffs. Elizabeth is just a common cook. Scandal in the making. Unmarried mother, all of that. Illegitimate child. John Lee, he's also with a young lady downstairs. They're having a few drinks, bit of a laugh. They wake up Miss Keyse. She comes down. She is furious at what's going on. She has a blazing row with Reginald. he loses his temper and goes into a rage, a fit. Now don't forget, this guy is unstable. And he hits her several times around the back of the head with a hatchet. He cannot afford, you see, to be found out. He would be ruined. Together now, they move the body upstairs. They set the scene, spread the paraffin around, and set fire to the house. That is the alternate story. Well, John Lee though. What if John Lee was actually innocent? Now, don't get me wrong, because he wasn't a good guy. What happened to him in the end? He becomes a minor celebrity. He sells his story for a small fortune. He marries a nurse. They have a child, and then when she's pregnant the second time, he abandons her to the workhouse. He's not actually that nice. And he absconds with his new lover, I believe, to the United States of America, and died in 1945 in Milwaukee, in the northern part of the United States. It's a heck of a story. The man they couldn't hang. Well, I hope you enjoyed our video there. Bit of a strange story, but it's a true one. So if you did, like, share and subscribe. And don't forget to press the all notification button so you know what's coming on down the line. Big shout out to our latest Patreon member, John Pessoa. Thanks very much, John, for joining our little community there. Without you guys, I wouldn't be able to do these great models. So thanks a bunch, and thanks a million to everybody out there. Bye for now. To the workhouse. He's not actually that nice.